A bright California sunrise. It's January 15th, 1947. Los Angeles wakes up to a perfectly peaceful winter morning. The sun is shining and nothing in this quiet neighborhood seems out of place. But suddenly, that peace is literally shattered. A young mother is walking down the street, glances toward a vacant lot, and thinks she's looking at a discarded mannequin. But as she gets closer, the reality becomes horrifyingly clear. It wasn't a mannequin at all. It was the body of a young woman. And what made this discovery so uniquely chilling was the profound silence of the scene. I mean, there were no signs of a struggle, no blood at the location, no witnesses. The body was carefully posed. It was almost as if someone desperately wanted the entire city to witness their dark masterpiece. Section 1. Hollywood's Darkest Secret, the Gruesome Discovery. And that brings us to a critical question that's going to guide our explainer today. What happens when a murder becomes a media masterpiece? Because as we just saw, the crime scene itself was deliberately theatrical. But the city, and more importantly the newspapers, well, they took that theatricality and amplified it 1,000 times over. The focus almost immediately shifted away from catching a brutal killer to selling a sensational story. The real victim was totally overshadowed by the character the media needed her to be.
Moving to Section 2, creating the Black Dahlia, the power of the press.
As Los Angeles descended into outright fear, the press realized they needed a narrative that would hook readers day after day. Taking notice of her dark clothing, they drew inspiration from a popular film noir of the era, and boom, they officially crowned her the Black Dahlia. That name spread across America almost overnight. They painted her as this mysterious seductress, a dangerous femme fatale living a secret double life. But why? Well, simply put, to sell newspapers. That's the core of it. The press deliberately twisted the victim's true identity, fabricating this whole aura of dark romance and danger purely because it boosted circulation. They weren't just reporting on a tragic death anymore. They were serializing a real-life thriller. Section 3. The Dreamer Behind the Myth, Uncovering Elizabeth Short.
Now, what's really interesting about this, and honestly heartbreaking, is the contrast. The media invented this seductive, dangerous woman who somehow courted her own demise. But the truth was far more tragic. Before the newspapers gave her a name she never chose, she was Elizabeth Short, a soft-spoken, kind 22-year-old kid who moved out to Los Angeles after World War II with dreams of becoming an actress. Investigators and friends described her not as some femme fatale, but as a young woman just searching for a place to belong. She drifted from city to city, worked odd jobs, and just hoped to be discovered. Her biggest mistake wasn't living some sordid double life. It was simply crossing paths with someone capable of unimaginable evil.
Section 4. A calculated theatrical murder, the forensic evidence.
Let's look at the forensic evidence, because when detectives examined Elizabeth's body, they knew right away this wasn't an ordinary crime. The body had actually been separated in half with astonishing precision through a procedure known as a hemicorporectomy. The cuts were exceptionally clean. And get this, medical examiners noted there were almost no hesitation marks. That total lack of hesitation, it proved this wasn't some crime committed in a blind panic. Whoever did this possessed deep surgical knowledge or extensive anatomical training. It was a planned, highly clinical act executed with terrifying calm.
And then, investigators noticed something even more disturbing, the Glasgow smile. Her mouth had been cut from the corners all the way toward her ears. This horrific detail wasn't necessary to end her life. It was done completely deliberately to permanently transform her face into something unforgettable. Plus, the body had been washed, completely drained of blood, and her fingerprints were removed. She was almost certainly murdered somewhere else, then transported and deliberately displayed. This absolutely proves the killer wanted to create a theatrical display. He wanted an audience.
Section 5. Trapped in his game, the killer taunts the city. Okay, look at how this timeline escalates, because the killer actively consumed and manipulated the exact media machine the newspapers had so eagerly built. On January 15th, the murder is discovered. Literally 24 hours later, the press invents the Black Dahlia persona. But then, rather than hiding, the killer leans right in. Days later, he mails an anonymous package straight to the Los Angeles Examiner. Weeks after that, he sends mocking letters to the police. The killer wasn't hiding at all, he was performing. Every single sensational headline, every radio broadcast, every terrified conversation gave him exactly the audience he craved. The newspapers created the myth to sell papers, and the killer used that exact myth to elevate his own twisted game. The whole city was trapped in this terrifying feedback loop.
Let's talk about that package sent to the Examiner. Inside, investigators found Elizabeth's birth certificate, personal photographs, an address book, and letters assembled entirely from cut-out newspaper clippings. But chillingly, every single one of these items had been carefully wiped clean with gasoline to destroy any trace of fingerprints. Think about that for a second. This highlights the calculated, terrifying intelligence of the killer. He wanted to safely perform for the press, feeding that newspaper cycle without ever exposing himself to capture.
Section 6. The Prime Suspect. Dr. George Hodel. Enter Dr. George Hodel. He was a highly intelligent, very respected Los Angeles physician. Crucially, he was known to possess the exact kind of extensive surgical knowledge investigators believed the killer had. Now, for decades, nothing was proven against him. But in a massive, shocking twist, years later, his own son, a retired LAPD detective named Steve Hodel, began digging into his father's past. Steve actually uncovered old photographs, medical connections, and witness accounts that firmly linked his dad to the dark underbelly of Hollywood. It paints a deeply, deeply disturbing picture of the man.
So the crucial point here is a detail from the initial investigation. The LAPD actually secretly wiretapped Dr. Hodel's home. And in one of those recordings, he allegedly said, and I quote, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they can't prove it now." Wow, right? It forces us to ask, was this a genuine, chilling confession caught on tape? Or was it just the sick, cruel joke of a highly arrogant man who knew the police were listening in? To this day, no court has ever found George Hodel guilty, and the evidence remains fiercely debated. Which leaves us with one final haunting thought as we conclude our explainer today. Will the shadow of the Black Dahlia ever truly reveal the truth? Elizabeth Short came to Los Angeles searching for a dream, but because of a brutal killer and a wildly sensationalist press corps, she became Hollywood's darkest legend. The newspapers literally stripped away the reality of a 22-year-old dreamer just to create a mythical character that would fly off the newsstands. And in doing so, they gave the killer the grand stage he so desperately wanted. Perhaps the absolute truth still sits inside a forgotten police file somewhere, or perhaps it disappeared forever. But as you reflect on this case, remember the ultimate cost of that sensationalism and how the media's creation forever changed the legacy of Elizabeth Short. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.